honey, because we're learning about the verse. There's milk and honey.
Normus is north of Lambeth. It was a good tribe, but it's north. Okay. Yeah.
So we said that the land flowing with milk and honey. So this is a theme that appears in the Alter Rebbe many times, of analyzing the milk and honey. And what we saw the last 2 days is that milk is what we call the chesed, the loving kindness of, really it's of da'at, it's of knowledge, it's gadlus, it's called. And honey, as we saw yesterday, is the gvuros of the gadlus. Why we call it gadlus? Because both milk and honey cause the child to grow, right? To get that growth spurt.
Other things also cause it to grow.
No, but these are the these are the things he actually eats. Okay. So we talked yesterday about honey being a preservative, and the preservation aspect of it is the contraction. It's able to squeeze things, and it slowly transforms it. Because of that squeezing, it transforms it itself into honey, which is why if we don't have a kashrus problem with bee parts in honey, because we say that if they used to be, for sure. Today they sift through it, but even they can't completely clean it.
Was there honey that wasn't kosher?
Yeah,
was
of course.
It royal jelly or something?
No, that's a different problem because it's not really honey. It's a different product that the bees make, and they don't even make it the same way.
Right.
So, but the honey itself is regardless of what's in it, it's been transformed into honey, and the idea there is that it's contraction also. So we have the milk, which is causing the child to grow, okay, making him bigger, and that's call it the chesed of das there. And the honey is the gvura of das. What does this all have to do with us? So here, Yaakov, this is all. Whenever you're talking about contemplating Hashem, so you have to have dvash v'chalav tachat leshonecha. You have to have both milk and honey in the contemplation, because otherwise there's nothing of godliness that's coming down. Godless means that it overflows. When you say the land is flowing with milk and honey, a better translation would be a land overflowing with milk and honey. Land is the malchus. Land is you. It's memalik kol almin. It's the light that fills our world. It's how you understand things. So when you contemplate, it has to be that it overflows. It goes beyond what you can contain. Because otherwise, all you're doing is you're just strengthening your own proclivities. You're not doing anything new.
What?
Proclivities. You don't like that word?
That word up?
Yeah. I made it up actually 15 years ago, but I've been using it since.
There's no such word.
Yeah, it's like a propensity. A proclivity is like a propensity. The same thing. It just sounds smarter.
No, I don't believe it.
Yeah, you can look it up. Okay. So where do we get to?
So translate that word into Hebrew. Maybe I'll know what you're talking about.
Netiyah. If you're only contemplating the way that you understand, and it never overflows, your contemplation never overflows, never goes beyond the confines of your thought, the confines of what you can understand, then it's not Hashem. It's just an intellectual exercise. There always has to be that something's overflowing. So that's what the land that's overflowing with milk and honey. That's really how it should be translated. Zavat even says, not here, it says it in the Ketei Torah. So it means that it causes the overflow. The milk and the honey come from the place that causes the overflow. So they are overflowing. Okay. V'animshal mikol ze yuvan lemala. So we're here on page 32 in this paragraph. ונמשל מכל זה מובן למעלה ביות כי אנו אומרים אתה נפחת בי ואתה משמרה בקרבי, יש להבין מה הוא צריך לשמר לשמור הנפש בגוף. When we wake up we say that you blew the breath of life into me, the soul into me, and you sustain it, you guard it, you keep it in me. So it says, why does the soul have to be kept in the body? Why does the psyche have to be kept? Theoretically, the moment you put something somewhere, you don't have to. Who's coming to steal it? What's the problem? העניין הוא לפי שעל ידי יניקת החלב דאמא הגדיל הוויה, פירוש בכנסת ישראל יהיה מוחים והשגות נפלאות בהוויה, בדוגמת הוויה אמיתי שלמעלה באצילות. So the reason is because the more you have this Partzufa Yenika. Yenika, we said, is suckling. So you're suckling from the mother's milk. It's like contemplating through Torah. And because it causes you to increase, because it's godless, it causes you to expand the milk and even the honey. But we'll see the honey in a moment. But first of all, the milk is something that expands you. So physically it expands the child. But spiritually what it's expanding is expanding the moichin and hasagos. Meaning it's expanding the mind, it's expanding the grasp of what Hashem is. And this is happening in Knesset Israel. It's happening in the congregation of Israel. When we learn, we didn't write this. At least I don't think any of us did. So whoever wrote this, he's part of the congregation of Israel now. That's how we see him. Like whenever I learn Torah, I'm learning something that's like been preserved, the collective consciousness of the people. So this is all causing me to expand. And this is not the Havaya, this is not Za. It's not the way that a person perceives Hashem in his limits. It's how Hashem can be perceived in Atzilus, in emanation. It's much, much wider, much bigger. Because it says that when the female awakens, then she gives birth to a male. And the male means that he has the qualities of being a mashpia. He has the qualities of giving over. So who are these? I have to tread carefully here. What do you mean? What are we expanding into? We're expanding into being the face of Hashem. Man pnei Adon Havaya da Rashbi. And he doesn't quote the end of the Zohar. But the end of the Zohar is one of the things that they all contested, because how can you say something like that? It says, because the Pasuk says something strange. It says, Yira'eh kol zchurcha et pnei ha'adon Havaya. All of your males will see, or be in front of, will face the master Havaya. So Havaya, I know what that is. That's Hashem. What's the master Havaya? Adon Havaya. It's only one time in the entire Tanakh, I think, it disappears. So Zohar says, Da Rashbi. We're talking about the tzaddik. The tzaddik is the master part of Havaya. That's why we call him Admor, right? We call him. Where did we get this word? We got it from the Zohar. He's Adon, Moreh v'Rav. Moreh v'Rav always existed. Mori v'Rabi. Right? That was common even in the time of the Talmud, but they didn't call him Admor. That didn't exist. So this was after the Zohar was revealed, so that we know that also the name, the word Adon also relates to the tzaddik. And as it says, Atidim tzaddikim, sages say, it's interesting that they didn't bring a footnote, a citation here. It's a mimer in the Gemara, and it's dealing with the last chapter of Yechezkel. And it's saying, Atidim tzaddikim sheikaru al shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The tzaddikim will be named just like Hashem. We'll call them by the same name. He's Hashem. That's how you call him. Why? Because you'll see that they have a perception, such a strong perception of godliness, that it's almost that for you, the way that you see yourself, this is like something divine. It's something beyond me. It's very interesting that I was listening to interview that Jordan Peterson did with this up and coming Muslim theologian. He's a theologian. I don't know if I don't know if he's even a theologian, but he's very learned, meaning that he's in some English, right? The English love them. Some English university, and he's doing a doctorate on Muslim theology. I doubt there's very many people in the world who, in the last 1,000 years, have even touched the subject. Because if you touch it, they kill you. So he's doing it. So it's interesting to hear like all his perception of Islam, and then he says very clearly, in Islam, man does not have a divine side. There's no such thing. Man is special, but that's all. There's no divine imbuing itself within mankind. There's no such thing. Why is that? Why? Because they have no love. Very simple. Because they're all gvura from beginning to end. Only when you have a perception of Hashem as loving you, can you have the perception of Hashem entering you, of there being chelek eloka mimal, a part of God above, inside you. That's where Avram failed with Yishmael. He couldn't get that through to him. He couldn't get him to see Hashem as also loving. Avram saw him entirely as loving. Avram Avi, he loved him and he felt that Hashem was loving him. But Yishmael only sees that. So when you're only with Yira, you can't have any name of Hashem on you. There's no such thing. They can't call anything by the name of Hashem. Everything is just it also means life is not so sacred. Life is the life of a man and the life of a mouse are comparable. It's a tfisat olam. It's a good conceptual scheme of the world.
The difference is what size knife you take to chef with.
Right. That's about it. That's how they see it. So, it's a very important point. So here what we're saying is that if you believe, if you understand that because Hashem loves mankind, He loves the Jewish people, so He imbues Himself in them, so there's a part of me that's divine, so then you can begin to understand that you can also call Him by the name of Hashem. You can be the master. You can be something like that. Obviously it's not Hashem, that's where the Christians went too far. But the idea is that there's a certain balance here. That we're corporal, we're human beings, but a human being can ascend in his perception of God to such a level that he's even called by God's name. And if that happens, you have a contradiction. Because if you are physical, how can you contain the infinite? You can't. So what would happen? So the neshama would come out. The neshama would part with the body because it can't. Because that's what it means, that when you learn Torah, you can come to that state where you have itpashtuta gashmiut. When you feel
physical world, also you have a mixture of things. It's called an emulsion. You take two different things and you mix them together, and as soon as you stop mixing, they will separate. Therefore, you need some
if it's
other
a mixture,
ingredient.
right.
You need some other ingredient to hold the two things within the mixture. So you can have a neshama instead of goof, which is an unnatural combination. They don't belong to each other. So you need something else to hold it in place, a preservative, called learning Torah. Otherwise, it can't stay there.
So here he's saying that learning Torah is what causes the separation. It's not what's causing it, because, like you said, they're a mixture. But still, they're a special mixture because we see this we learned many years ago, the Maimer in the beginning of Torah Or, that by all the other animals, the psyche, the soul. That by all the other animals, the nefesh and the body are of the same stature. They belong with one another. It's not exactly a mixture there. It's more like what's the opposite of after mixture? You have, what's the next level in chemistry?
All sorts of things.
No,
An emulsion.
what?
An emulsion.
No, there's before emulsion. The mixture, and there's when there's like a molecule. What's it called? Emulsion, I guess, is weaker than this. But what do you call it when you have a molecule? It's not called a mixture. It's called a whatever. It's called bonding. I guess it's like covalent.
Bonding is by the chemical forces.
Okay.
There's an attraction. Like gravity.
Right. So the connection between the psyche, the nefesh of animals and their body is much stronger than a human being. Because in the human being there's a wider gap between the body and the soul. Because the body is from a very low place, and the soul is from a very high place. So it can be even relative to the other creatures. Our body is more refined, but the gap is so big, and that you need extra something to hold it together. So Torah doesn't do that. Mitzvos do that. Mitzvos are something that causes the connection to be stronger. But the Torah, when a person learns Torah, then he feels that he's leaving his body. He's not. That says what happened to us when we heard the Torah being given at Mount Sinai.
Souls took
The
life.
souls were flying. It says that even now, when you learn, should be v'ira beretet uvezia. Should have the same experience that you had then. Be'ima be'ira beretet uvezia. The zia, it's a word you don't like.
Right.
Zia. It's not shlita.
Zia is sweating.
But zia, it's not shlita. So.
I don't know what to refer to. Never had the
Okay. Anyway, so ואם כן, כל ניצוץ לא יוכל להישאר בחומר גופו, מאחר שמשם הוויה נלקחו בשורשו, קודם שנזרע בבטן מלכות האצילות, כידוע שחלק הוויה עמו. So he says, even before, we said the beten of the Malchus, right? That's the Knesset Yisrael here. That's the Malchus of Atzilus. Remember, we called the beten. It's kind of connoted a lot of times as the stomach. It's the Malchus of Atzilus. And so, before it was put into the Malchus of Atzilus, and it comes down, and then it can be contained in the worlds. When you contemplate Hashem, you go beyond that. And then it's called Chelek Havaya Amo. Then the name of Havaya itself comes into you. And then it's a completely different proposition. It's not so easy to keep the body and the soul together. They have a tendency to separate. ולכך שישיג הניצוץ באמיתת בחינת הוויה, סובב כל עלמין, כמו שכתוב שיוויתי הוויה. והיינו בעת הגילוי הגדול בחינת לידה כנ"ל, ובפרט שידיל על ידי יניקת בחינת חלב כנ"ל. מוכרח הדבר שיופשט מגשמיות גופו בבחינת מסירת נפש ממש. The result is that the soul tends to leave the body then. מחמת, and then it's famous words of the Or HaChaim, but everybody used it afterwards. It's also in the Gemara. מחמת הערבות ומתיקות, right? The full one is noam. נעימות, ערבות, מתיקות. It says that that's what caused Nadav and Avihu's souls to depart. Because there's such sweetness. The Or HaChaim's famous words, it became a song. Okay. If people knew of the sweetness of Torah, so they would cry out in like almost in craze from what they feel. I'll send it to you later. והשיג שורש העצמי כמשל שלהב את העולם מאליה, ואז נקראת קלה, קלתה נפשי ממש. So now we better understand why the Kala is called by this name, that she annihilates herself, because it's an annihilation. The soul, which is like a flame, it rises up by itself, and it rises up so far that it almost wants to depart. It doesn't want to be here. וזהו אתה נפחת בי, כמו שכתוב, ויפח באפה, ואתה משמרה בקרבי, בלתי תיפרד מן הגוף לגמרי, ותאכלה במקור חוץ צבא. So that's why after he blows the breath of life into me, he also has to safeguard it. He also has to conserve it. He has to keep it. So the conservation and the preservative aspect of the davash, of the honey, now becomes something that preserves the soul inside the body, conserves it so that it doesn't depart. So that's the gvura. The chesed in the gadlus, the chesed in the yanika, that's what causes me to expand, my mind expands, my soul expands, and I risk losing it. But the honey in it, the honey that's in the Torah, also what I learned, the constriction, the contraction, that's what keeps it inside. Okay. והיינו שנמשך בחינת, ועניין שימור זהו על ידי בחינת הדבש, שארץ עליונה זבת חלב ודבש גם כן. And for that you need the honey. והיינו שנמשך בחינת גבורות שבחסדים עליונים להחביץ ולהצמית הניצוץ שיתקיים בחומרו ולא יוכלל. So it causes differentiation. Gvura is always about differentiation. So what does it mean to keep it inside of me? To keep it inside of me means that I feel still separate. It's a problem. You have to feel separate in this world. You can't, if you don't feel separate at all, there's a real risk that your life will end. You have to feel some separation. What does it mean to feel separation? You don't have to feel separation in the sense that you don't have to do an aveira to be separate. You don't have to do something wrong to be separate. You can just connect, you can just meditate on the fact that I have a special mission in life. And it's not Yaakov's mission. And it's not Shemot's mission. It's something else. I have my own mission. And it's also very good for jealousy. For jealousy, for getting rid of jealousy. I have my mission, he has mission. I don't know from anybody else's mission. I don't know what they need to do. I need to find out what I need to do. So that's called, when you learn Chassidus, it's called, in the end, you do a liba dedate. That you learn according to your own understanding. Why? Because even though on the one hand I want the klal, I want to understand the very general meaning of what all this means, on the other hand I have to apply it to myself. Because if it'll only be the general meaning, nothing will stick. It'll just be like, instead of my soul, it could be just letters flowing up into the air. Going up, rising, and don't remember anything in the end. Aliba dedate, when I do it according to my own consciousness, according to my own understanding, and I apply it to myself, so then there's a good chance that I'll remember it. It'll mean something. But stuff that I learned because a person learns Shulchan Aruch and he can't apply it right away, he probably won't remember it. Unless he's very, very intellectual. I mean, I know a guy like this once, but most people, when I learn Shulchan Aruch and I can't right away think of a practical application, and not just think of it, but do it. If you don't do it that Shabbos, if you're learning Hilchos Shabbos, and you don't do it that Shabbos, you don't remember to do it, or to bring it up on the table, something, you have to, it's otiyot borchot v'avil, it's letters that flow into the air. וביאור דבר זה הובן על דרך דוגמה ממה שאנו רואים. So now he has an example. כי כאשר תחפוץ הנפש להתענג על השם בערבות ומתיקות עד קלטה ממש, בצדיקים הגדולים כידוע, הנה במה תחזור להתקיים בגופם. This is a great tzaddik when he wants to contemplate Hashem. He wants to take pleasure from contemplating Hashem. What keeps the soul inside his body? ומה שכתוב בזוהר שהוא עניין דאיל ונפיק. Because what can happen is that it goes up and it leaves, it exists. אינו על ידי שתחפוץ יותר בתורה ומצוות בעולם הזה משתהנה מזיו השכינה. כמאמר ז"ל, יפה שעה אחת בתשובה, מעשים טובים מכל חיי העולם הבא. So what's the remedy? The remedy is that I want to do a mitzvah. Mitzvah is always, that's what we said before, that it's not the Torah that keeps you sane in this world. What keeps you in this world are the mitzvahs. Because the mitzvahs you can do with the physical body. So we started talking about it, I think, yesterday, the day before. When did we talk about this? Maybe I didn't talk with you about it. All these screens that people have now, what are they? They're taking them out of the world.
All these what?
Screens, like this screen. You see people for hours. I don't know what they're doing. They're watching stuff. That becomes their world. What
addiction?
It's much more than, it's way, way beyond addiction. Why is it beyond addiction? Because in addiction, because they're people, they create worlds even in the world of addiction. But in general, the addiction itself is like a non-normal state of the mind. But with the screens, it's like you're normal. You talk to people, you read things, you watch things. It looks normal. It looks so normal that they end all of it. Right? Where is it all going? It's all going to create they used to have a name for it, which was an online world, or an online reality, or virtual reality. Now they have the new word is metaverse. Yeah? So it's a different universe. It's all every single person is his own world, and now we're going to bring them all together, and then you're going to live online. You're going to live in this world. So it's a very, very big problem. Why is it such a problem? People say, what's wrong? If you can make your money there, and you have a robot who prepares food for you, and you just sit in your chair all day, and when you need to do exercise, the chair moves your feet, whatever it is. What's the problem then? You'll just be connected all day like a brain in a vat. That's what they used to call it in the 70s. A guy called Searle invented this thought experiment of the brain in the vat. Would you know the difference between reality and not reality? You probably wouldn't know, because fool your brain into thinking that you're in the world. So what's wrong with it? It's a great way to pass your life. Maybe you'd live a long time. Maybe because you would only eat healthy things and do exercises exactly when you needed to, and you would never get upset, because if there was anything upsetting, the metaverse would like move you somewhere else and show you something to calm you down, and whatever. It's a great thing. There's only one problem.
It's not reality.
You can't do a mitzvah there. There's another thing you can learn, but you can't do any other mitzvahs.
You can't give tzedakah online.
You can't give tzedakah.
Why?
Because you have to physically give it. You have to do something. You have to physically give it. Every mitzvah needs some kind of physical action. There's only 6 mitzvahs that don't. Right? Those are the mitzvahs of the heart. But everything else, it requires a physical. You can't build a sukkah online. You can't sit in the sukkah online. You can't make kiddush online. You can't keep Shabbos online. You can't do anything. You can't daven. You can't put tefillin on. You can't do anything. So the Jews are going to be saved. This is going to happen, whether we like it or not. It's going to happen. And then the world is going to divide, and it's always going to be, people who oppose this because it's different, because this is not what they'll say. This is not what mankind was meant to be like. How do you know? You don't know. But I know. How do I know? Because I know that Hashem wants me to wake up in the morning and do negavasa. It's a different reality. I live in reality. Whereas if you don't have mitzvos, you can depart reality. That's the equivalent today of what he's talking about. He says a tzaddik could experience this even 3,000 years ago. A regular person will begin to experience this once this thing is set up, and people are already experiencing it, having no contact with the outside world. I remember in the 80s there was the first movie that started, maybe it was in the 90s, I don't remember what it was called. It was with Sandra Bullock. I can't remember what it was called. She was a programmer who had agoraphobia. Oh, I remember what it was called. It was called something, agoraphobia.
Agoraphobia.
Okay. It's written with another A after the G, but it's fine. So she had agoraphobia. And she didn't want to come out of her house. It's called something Speed. Can't remember what it was. Remember what it was called? Something Speed. It was Keanu Reeves.
With the bus?
Yeah.
Yeah, Speed.
Speed. It's just Speed. So she was living completely reclusively inside her home. It never goes out. It's always online. This was in the early 90s. So imagine it was CompuServe. I don't know what it was. Internet wasn't even like really. Yeah, whatever it was. And people already lived online. So you can imagine where people are now. And mamish people who never leave their screen. That's where they are. Their lives are there. So that's being out of the world. It's not being in the world. How do I know it's not being in the world? Because it says being in the world means doing a mitzvah. That's your real connection to the world. When you have to do a mitzvah, then you know that the neshama is now connected to the physical world. It has to be, because otherwise, because there's no even davening is a nekimat tzvatim. It has to be some type of ma'aseh. And that's what the sages say. Yafa shachat b'tshuva ma'asim tovim in kol chayei olam haba. The world to come. Here we're talking about Gan Eden. Is going to be completely spiritual. It's after the soul departs the body. That's called Gan Eden. That's called Olam Haba. We learned about all the different categories of Olam Haba not long ago. So, but the life in this world, even 1 hour in this world, is better than all of the world to come. Why? Because in this world you can do a mitzvah. And you can't do it there. What time is it? Okay.
It's not minion, but we're going to do.
Yeah. We have to be.
Don't forget tomorrow is Wednesday.